Ba-ba-da-dum! Howdy, welcome to BanjoBenClark.com. This is your online home for learning how to play the banjo, the mandolin, and the guitar. This week is a great lesson. It encompasses a lot of theory and really covers one of the main building blocks to learning music online nowadays. Most people nowadays, they didn't have it back in the old days. People had to, walk uphill both ways to school and stuff. But nowadays we have what's called tablature. And it's important to be able to read tablature if you're wanting to learn from my site and from others. Of course, I do offer video lessons, but with each one of my videos, I offer tabs that are exact printouts of what I play in the video. So if you learn how to read tabs, you can print out these tabs and you can take them with you wherever you go. And you don't always have to have access to the video. So today we are going to learn what goes into reading tabs. And this video actually has a tab that goes along with it. But we are going to learn really a couple different things that goes into this. One thing about reading tab, most people think just, well, where am I putting my fingers? And that's true. You've got to be able to know where to put your fingers, but more importantly, it's timing, it's counting, it's learning what whole notes and half notes and quarter notes and eighth notes are and what rests are and pick strokes and all of that stuff. All of that is covered in over a 40-minute lesson that I've created. If you're watching this on YouTube or on Facebook, here in a little while, I'll ask you to go over to my website, BanjoBenClark.com, where you can watch this entire video. And gosh, I have over 150 different lessons over there, probably close to 200 now. But if you learn how to read tab, if you learn how to confidently be able to do that, I'm not saying it's necessary to be able to learn how to flat pick, but it's just going to open your world up to tons of tunes, okay? So check it out. Now the first thing that we need to establish whenever we're going to start talking about reading tabs is that it's not standard notation, okay? It's not your regular music, so there's going to be a couple things that are different, okay, as far as showing you where to put your fingers on the neck. But a lot of things are the same with standard notation, and that's one thing that we're really going to concentrate today on is your actual counting, okay? We're going to concentrate on 4/4 time. You see that there in measure 1, those two fours stacked there. That just establishes that this song is in 4/4 time. Now most of the songs that we play are in 4/4 time. The other most common one would be called a waltz, and it's in 3/4 time. But what 4/4 time simply means is that there's 4 beats in each measure. Now we see 4 measures here. Measures are divided by those little bar lines. Okay, I have the measures numbered at the top. And 4/4 just simply means that each one of those measures is going to get 4 beats. Now it can be divided up in lots of different ways, and we're going to do that throughout this lesson with lots of different kinds of notes that we're going to learn. But that's really, we have 2 main things that we need to learn. One is where do we put our fingers and how does tabs show you how to do that? 2, how do we count? Okay, that's very important because without a method of counting, our songs have no structure. So each one of these measures are going to get 4 beats. Now I'm going to use these first 4 measures to first just introduce you to the strings of the guitar. And we see that labeled there also at the beginning of measure 1. And the first thing I want to say is it may seem backwards to you, okay? Because the very top line of the tab is actually our bottom string, what you might think would be our bottom string of the guitar. That's actually the top string of the guitar. Okay, so a lot of people say it looks backwards, it should be flipped around, but you'll get used to it after a while, and the way that I remember it is as the tab goes up, okay, so as we see it climbing there in measures 2 going into measures 3, our note pitches are going to climb up. Okay, we have 6 strings on the guitar, and we start out there in measure 2, we've got a 0. That 0, that first beat, 0, just means that we're not playing any frets on the guitar. It's just what's called an open string. Okay, and you see there that it's on the E string, and that's actually the bottom E string, the low E string right here. If you're not tuned up, you can kind of use this time to tune your guitar up with mine. The next note that we see, the second one in measure 2, is an open A string. The next one is an open D string. Then the fourth note there in measure 2 is an open G string. So you can just follow that 0 back and see which string it's on. It's on the G string. Starting in measure 3, we've got an open B string. And then the second note, measure 3, is going to take us all the way up all 6 strings of the guitar to this high E string, or I'll sometimes refer to it as the first string. If we're going to number them, we're going to number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay, so we're coming down in pitch, and that's what we do there, starting in the second note of measure 3. We've arrived on that high E, and then we're just going to come back down. B, G. Measure 4 has a D string, an A string, and an E string. All right, now we've established that. Now let's talk about some different notes that we're going to be using. Now there in measure 5, I'm going to introduce a whole note to you. Okay, once again, we're still just dealing with open strings. Here in a little while, we're going to start talking about where to put our fingers. But this whole note is important to know because it has the equivalence of 4 beats. Okay, now I've drawn out beneath the notes there some counting. I'm going to be counting along as we play. We're going to use a metronome here in a little while. But I've told you that in 4/4 time, each measure gets 4 beats. A whole note gets 4 beats all by itself. Okay, that's why it's called a whole note. It takes up the whole measure all by itself. You can tell a whole note both in tab and in standard notation in that it doesn't have a stem. You notice that? In measure 5, compared to the other notes in measures 6, 7, and 8, they don't have stems coming down. So that means it gets 4 beats all by itself. And I also want to introduce to you another part of reading tab that I put on my tabs. Some people don't, but I think it's very helpful, and that's our pick direction. You see that black arrow beneath the note? And that black arrow is pointing down. So that means that I'm going to play a G string open. It's a 0, so it's open, and I'm going to use a down pick stroke. And it's going to last 4 beats. So if we had a metronome going, which I'll get going here, each one of these clicks represents a beat. Okay? So if you're going to count 1, 2, 3, 4. Now I like to count and add an and in between each one of the beats, and it'll make more sense later when we get into eighth notes and we're playing faster. So I would count this 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So if you want to play measure 5 all by itself, just a whole note, I'm going to give you a count off, and then we'll play measure 5 together. When I say a count off, that just means I'm going to count a full measure of time before we play the measure that we're going to play. 1 and 2 and 3 and ready, go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and that's measure 5 all by itself. That's pretty simple, right? A whole note just takes up a whole measure. Now the next note that we're going to look at in measure 6 is a half note. So if a whole note gets 4 beats, how many beats do you think a half note gets? That's right, it gets 2 beats each. Okay, so now it's going to take 2 half notes. If they get 2 beats each, it's going to take 2 of them to fill up a measure that requires 4 beats. Okay, and that's what we see here. You see we have a half note, again drawn on the G string for measures for beats 1 and 2 and then we have another one for 3 and 4 and. And the way that you can tell a half note in my tab is that the stems, it has a stem there. Look down beneath the staff. It has a little partial stem, but it doesn't go all the way up to the note like we're going to see in quarter notes and eighth notes. Okay, so that tells you by just looking at it that it's a half note. It gets 2 beats. So this time we're going to play a note for 1 and 2 and then we're going to play another one for 3 and 4 and. Let's try that together. I'll give you a whole measures count off once again. 1 and 2 and 3 and ready, go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Good. Okay, let's try that again. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Now real quick, let's play measure 5 and measure 6 together. So we're going to have one measure of just a whole note, then the next measure will be these 2 half notes. Ready? 1 and 2 and 3 and measure 5. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and Good. Now, I have to explain the cousins of these notes. Each one of these notes have cousins known as rests, okay? And rests are simply a notation that tells us that nothing is being played, okay? So I'm going to introduce you here in measure 7 to a half note rest, okay? So how many beats do you think a half note rest gets? Well, it gets the same amount as a half note, okay? But it just tells you that there's 2 beats, that nothing is being played, okay? So measure 7, we start out with a half note played on the G string, open, and then we have 2 beats of rest. Now, whenever we have rest, it doesn't necessarily mean that we need to dampen and have no sound, okay? But I'm going to do that here just to demonstrate what it sounds like. Measure 7, we're just going to play a half note on the first 2 beats, then rest on the second 2 beats. 1 and 2 and 3 and measure 7. 1 and 2 and rest and 4 and. There you go. Let's try it again. Ready, go. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. See, we had 2 beats of note and we had 2 beats of rest, of silence. And in measure 8, all I've done is inverted that and put the rest at the front of the measure and then the half note on the back half of the measure. So what would it sound like? Let's play measure 8 together. Here's a tip. We don't play anything on the first and second beats. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Okay? So let's try measure 7 and 8 together. We're going to play 2 beats, a half note, then rest for 2 beats, rest for the first 2 beats of measure 8, and then play another half note. Let's try 7 and 8 together. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Good. Let's try measures 5 through 8 all together. Can you do that? This will be a good basis. And then we can move on into quarter notes and eighth notes where things start getting faster. And then 2 and 3 and measure 5. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and rest and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. Good job. Good job. Now, let's look at quarter notes. Okay, a half note gets 2 beats, but a quarter note gets 4 beats. And you can see that here. We're going to have a beat on, or a note on every beat of the measure, and then we're going to introduce quarter note rest as well. And then we're going to start switching strings and learning where to put our fingers.